Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled, What if Bo Jackson went to Texas and created modern college football? October 8th, 1983. The Cotton Bowl is shaking. Not loud, shaking. Because standing on the Texas sideline is the most terrifying athlete in America. Number 34, Bo Jackson. Across the field, Oklahoma defenders stop stretching just to watch him warm up. And according to legend, Barry Switzer looks over at one of his assistants and quietly says, "That ain't a running back, that's the future." And in this alternate history, he was right. Because this is not just a story of Bo Jackson choosing Texas, this is a story of how one recruit quietly transformed college football into something much larger, more paranoid, and impossible to control. And somehow, it feels almost like it could have happened. And that sets the table for the intro. The early 80s were the perfect environment for chaos. College football wasn't fully national yet. It still belonged to regions, to boosters, to local radio hosts, to newspaper whispers. And nowhere embodied that culture more than the Southwest Conference. The SWC was powerful, but was also infamous. Everybody suspected everybody. Oil money floated everywhere, and somehow it felt less like a football conference and more like a battle of who has more money with marching bands attached. At the center of it sits Texas, searching for its next icon, its next Earl Campbell. And in this universe, they find him in Bessemer, Alabama. And that sets the table for the recruitment. In real life, Bo Jackson became an Auburn legend. But in this alternate history, Texas changes the equation. Not with anything obviously wrong, not with modern NIL, that would have gotten them destroyed. Instead, Texas offers something much more on brand for the early 80s: influence, connection, visibility. The selling points are subtle. Austin is growing fast. Texas baseball matters. Powerful people live here. And if Bo Jackson becomes a Longhorn, doors will open. Nobody says exactly how. They don't need to. Because in 1980s college football, implication was everything. Then Texas makes the final move. They bring Bo into a dark room and roll old footage of Earl Campbell running through the defenders. The message isn't subtle. Texas isn't offering Bo a scholarship. They're offering him a throne. And in 1982, college football changes forever. Bo Jackson commits to Texas. The reaction is immediate. Auburn fans are devastated. Oklahoma fans are suspicious. And Alabama newspapers openly question how the state's greatest athlete leaves home. But quietly, behind the scenes, something else begins: rumors. And that sets the table for the whispers. At first, the stories are small. Bo appears at private booster banquets. Oil executives somehow know him by name. Baseball scouts keep appearing around Austin. Former Texas players casually mention that the right people take care of Longhorn legends. Nothing illegal can be proven, but across college football, coaches begin asking the same question: how exactly are the Longhorns pulling this off? And that question becomes even louder once Bo starts playing, because immediately Texas feels different, not unbeatable, but larger than football. Road stadiums sell out. Texas games dominate regional broadcasts. And maybe the strangest part, Texas starts recruiting nationally. Not just Texas kids, but California, Florida, and East Coast kids as well. In the early 80s, that was unusual. Programs weren't supposed to recruit like that yet. But suddenly, Texas isn't operating like a regional power anymore. They're operating like a future superpower. And nobody takes that personally, quite like Oklahoma. And that sets the table for Barry Switzer. Barry Switzer believes Texas is changing the sport itself, not just winning, but changing football. He sees celebrity culture, growing TV influence, aggressive booster networking, recruiting inflation, and he despises all of it. So Oklahoma responds the way only Oklahoma knows how, by becoming even more Oklahoma. Harder practices, meaner defenses, more physical football. The Red River rivalry evolves into something almost mythological. Texas feels flashy. Oklahoma feels ruthless. And in 1983, everything culminates. And in the 1983 Cotton Bowl, Bo rushes for over 200 yards. Oklahoma knocks him out briefly with a brutal sideline tackle. Fans throw debris. Players nearly fight before halftime. TV ratings surge across the country, and suddenly college football has its defining rivalry. Not just Texas versus Oklahoma, but future versus tradition, celebrity versus brutality, and America can't stop watching. And that sets the table for Auburn becomes haunted. Meanwhile, at Auburn, the pain never leaves, because in this alternate universe, Auburn didn't just lose a recruit, they lost the recruit, the player who is supposed to define the entire program. And over time, that changes Auburn psychologically. Pat Dye becomes obsessed with finding the next Bo Jackson. Auburn recruits harder, hits harder, takes larger risks, and eventually Auburn develops a national identity as college football's revenge program. The team emotionally built to destroy Texas, fake punts, goal line blitzes, wild formations, anything. Because Auburn fans spend decades asking the same question: what if Bo stayed home? And oddly enough, that pain makes Auburn cooler. Neutral fans start rooting for them. Because by the late 1980s, a lot of America is getting tired of Texas. And that sets the table for Alabama's identity crisis. The largest ripple effect happens quietly at Alabama because Bear Bryant is towards the end and nearing retirement. And in this alternate universe, Alabama watches the sport evolve without them. Texas becomes flashy. Oklahoma becomes militant. Auburn becomes emotional. And Alabama suddenly feels old. Then comes the symbolic breaking point. In 1985, a national magazine cover shows Bo Jackson in burnt orange under the headline, "The New Face of College Football." Inside Alabama, people lose their minds because now it feels personal. The greatest athlete the state had ever produced belongs to Texas. And many historians later point to this moment as the beginning of Alabama's long identity crisis. Not losing championships, but losing control. And that sets the table for the NCAA start circling. By the late 1980s, college football feels unstable. TV money is growing, recruiting has become more national, boosters are more aggressive, and the Southwest Conference feels radioactive. The NCAA investigates Texas repeatedly, but unlike SMU, Texas is careful. Nothing sticks, which somehow makes the rumors worse. Because fans become convinced Texas boosters control everything. TV networks protect Texas. Recruits are being quietly handled, and the Southwest Conference has become corrupted beyond repair. And honestly, maybe some of that was true. But this was the 1980s. College football lived in those gray areas, especially in Texas. And that sets the table for the true butterfly effect. You may be thinking to yourself that this is still just one recruit, one alternate decision. But Bo Jackson was never really the butterfly effect. This effect was what Texas learned from him. Because in this universe, Texas discovers the future before everyone else. Not NIL exactly, something earlier, more primitive, more dangerous. The understanding that college football was no longer just about football. It was about visibility, influence, branding, TV, celebrity, and power. And once Texas realizes that, the entire sport changes. TV contracts become more aggressive earlier. Recruiting becomes national earlier. Conference instability starts earlier. The SEC modernizes faster. The NCAA loses control faster. Texas didn't just take Bo Jackson, Texas accidentally created modern college football. And that sets the table for the ending. And maybe this is why this alternate history feels very real. Because all the ingredients already existed: the boosters, the paranoia, the TV money, the ambition, and the whispers. Bo Jackson simply became the spark. And in another universe, maybe that spark starts in Austin instead of Auburn. Maybe Texas becomes the empire college football could never stop. Maybe Oklahoma spends decades trying to destroy it. Maybe Auburn spends decades trying to recover from losing Bo. And maybe Alabama's obsession with reclaiming dominance begins right here, with one recruit, one decision, and one moment where college football quietly changed forever. If you enjoyed this college football alternate history and want more what if scenarios like this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and let me know. Does Texas eventually become too powerful to stop? Does Oklahoma succeed in overtaking Texas? Does Auburn ever recover? Or was college football always destined to become what it is today? Because sometimes the largest changes in sports history begin with rumors nobody could ever fully prove. And I'll see you in the next timeline.